Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted Exchanges. I'm excited to be here today. We've got if you guys are watching this, you're listening, you'll see that we have a guest on. Chris Sentz, I believe, is one of the most electrifying guests we've had on this show to date. He is a serial entrepreneur, he is a family man. He's got his hands on a little bit of everything. I met Chris down at the Miami Red Hawk Venture Pitch Competition. I think that's what it was called, something like that. It was at Miami University. He is previous Red Hawk, Red Hawks for life, I think is what you guys would say. But Chris, super excited to have you on here. Excited to kind of pick your brain about your experience as an entrepreneur. Maybe hear about some of the ventures that you're working on. If you could share some of that stuff, I know you had something new that you've been working on, and kind of just get to know you a little bit more.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Appreciate y'all having me on. Love the professional studio background you got there. And it was really cool to meet you at that venture pitch competition. I thought that was, I love going back to Miami, as you said, Miami for life, and giving back. And I mean, I don't know if I was nearly as good as those. I say kids, but I think young adults is more appropriate that we saw that night. Hopefully they represented us well. Did you have a good time there?
Oh man, I mean I love that stuff. I'm a big. I mean I love people. I love getting to know and networking, and my experience as an entrepreneur and knowing the struggles I dealt with, going and being able to do something like that where you not only get to like see what the next generation is doing and where their heads are at, but you get to meet people and provide feedback. Oh man, I loved it. I mean, I love that. I if I had more time, I'd sign up for every single one of those that I could to go out and mentor and stuff. Funny enough, one of the companies that was there is actually the company that won is doing an accelerator here in Cincinnati, and I've actually met with them a few times just to give them some mentorship and some ideas on how they can approach things. And yeah, super rewarding. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah. I was a little afraid the company that won had already been recruited into firms that were much too big and high-paying jobs to keep them in the entrepreneurial space. So I'm glad to hear they kept going.
Oh,
There's
good.
Yeah, go ahead.
You go first. This is a standoff, and I'm not going.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying. They didn't have anything like that. Uh, when I was there, I don't think entrepreneurialism was nearly as popular of a thing. But I can imagine. I mean, there are so many great entrepreneurs who've come out of school that the more that you can support them and get them access to mentors like yourself and communities. I mean, the sky's the limit with what these young adults can do.
Tons of opportunities out there these days. It's just taking advantage of those, and what you put in is typically what you get out. Cole, I know you kind of were just skimming the surface here for our listeners. Chris, if you don't mind, can you kind of just give us a little bit more background in terms of kind of your journey and kind of where you are now? I mean, it sounds like you're a jack of all trades. You've been invested in a lot of different things, but if you don't mind just sharing a little bit more about your story, that would be awesome.
Yeah, certainly. So it started at Miami. It's a good segue, actually. Is that I started my first company really selling products at Miami, and then from my dorm online. So yeah, I didn't know, at the time, didn't really consider it a business, just thought of it as a hustle.
Mm-hmm.
Made decent money selling. At first, I was buying things in bulk
Yep.
on eBay and selling them offline, and then that turned into having a good account, finding a product which is beauty products, high end beauty products that you find in spas, and then selling those online and being this was early 2000s, so in the top 1% of sellers on eBay, actually helping them craft the products and feedback, and grew that throughout school. And it was one of those things where, like I was saying, the we didn't really think of it as a business. I had a business partner, and we didn't really go through what those those kids were doing at Miami when they're doing this pitch competition. We were just like trial and error, figure it out. At the time, we were, running up credit cards to buy our inventory and storing it. There's no real drop ship options. Websites were super expensive, but it was an amazing journey. It ended up being wildly successful. Sold that company in within a year of graduation because, again, I didn't consider it like a startup. There was no aspiring to be like a big exit at the time.
Right.
The dot-com bubble had burst when I was in high school, and by the time I was in college, it was like, yeah, I didn't want to bartend or work in food service, so I just had this online thing that happened to make 6+ figures a month. You're like, okay, it's like whatever, it's cool. But it's so funny looking back, and people are like, yeah, you had a startup and you're doing this. You're like, oh yeah, I wish I would have thought about that at the time.
Like you didn't think of it that way. You just were like, hey, I don't want to. It was out of necessity. It sounds like you're like, hey, I don't want to be a bartender. I don't want to work in a restaurant. I need to make money. I need beer money. I need party money, but I don't want to do this. So you're like, yeah, like this sounds like a good idea. And it's just funny. I feel like there's a correlation between that and a lot of successes in life. When you're in them, you're not necessarily thinking about, oh, this is this. Like, oh, if I were to go back and put a label on it, like I was an entrepreneur, but at the time you're not going, man, look at me with my startup. You're just like, bro, I'm making some money. Like that's my hustle.
Absolutely. So, like when I travel abroad, shut it down for months, like things like that. You're like, whatever, it's all good. But it gave me such a leg up in the digital world. So I graduated in 07. And you think about the times I had experience with SEO optimization of listings and getting search traffic, of the early efforts on paid advertising. I mean, this is like the early days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Social media wasn't a thing. Like it's so crazy to think about. But in 2007, corporations still couldn't get on Facebook. So you just had this big leg up in going into the working world. I wanted to go to ad agencies. I had a finance major at first, and I fell in love with marketing. They've got a great program at Miami. And the ad agency game was just like this dream job. I wanted to travel the world, have really cool, diverse clients and get to do all this neat stuff. And we were doing this. We had a market research agency is where I went. And we were traveling, and, they spent a ton of money on this market research to have us go out and, observe folks in stores, talk to executives, kind of understand your business better than you know it. And my whole thing was, I could get you this information online way more effectively. And when you interview someone or you do, group studies, they're automatically going to bias the results. There's only so much you can do. If I sit you down and say, what's your favorite, whatever, you like Apple computers, tell me what you like about them. You're going to be on guard.
Right.
But people were expressing themselves online. And so I put my hand up and said, hey, can I just create this thing and I'll pull all the data that we're getting offline and spending months. I mean, we're traveling, we go on these 45-day trips where we're city to city to city for a single client. I was like, I can do that in hours, pull that much data in from all these different types of customers, set up listening posts, actually get them authentically talking about your brand. And that was pretty revolutionary in 2007, 2008. Nothing really existed like that. So it was really neat to start kind of taking these skills that I learned by hustling. I sold that company that I started. That was an eBay company. We had somebody come in and offer us cash. We're like, oh my gosh, somebody will give us this much money. This is
right. Like, yeah, done.
Is there an official?
Yeah.
Sorry to cut in here, but is there like an official name for that these days? Like I hear people saying like I've got a company or a business run through eBay or Amazon. Is there like a fancy term that's thrown out there these days? Do you know? And if not, no worries.
No, I mean, just sellers. I mean, a lot of the e-commerce community are folks who are selling those marketplaces. We wanted to get off of eBay. At the time, the investment in an e-commerce site was great enough. It just didn't make sense.
Yep.
And that was part of the reason we sold. It's like, do I want to take, it was, I think, $250,000 to make my own e-commerce site and pull these people off? You'll get repeat sales. Like we had a good reputation. or do I just take the money and run and
Right.
take that cash and run?
Right.
Take it and run. Move on to the next project.
Absolutely. So the journey, that was a huge leg up. Being the digital space just got me in the door, and whether it was, got involved in a couple more startups over the years, got through both internal and agency side of things. Big home service provider company up here in the downturn 2008. I was actually doing market research project as part of that agency, and the market collapsed, and the first thing to go is market research. So I actually went in to a corporate environment, which was super interesting. Found that traditional corporate environment, fit wise, I like to move fast. I like to get things done, and it was awesome, the impact that I could have. But you all of a sudden you're done. Like at some point you're like, I want to help more, but I have to like navigate all these things to do.
Right.
So
They try to put they try to put walls around you, right? They're like, okay, you can stay within this, and maybe you can flex out a little bit. But it sounds like they kind of tried to put like guardrails around it. Like, okay, and you're like, well, okay, I hit the edge of this. Let's move on to the next thing.
yeah, I mean, I was young and cocky, so I came in. We were doing 20 million a year online through this website they had, and I got them to 135 plus in the first 12 months taking over their website.
Damn.
And so it was just like, hey, that's the start. Here's how we're going to get to $1 billion. And they're like, what are you talking? You're crazy. Like and they really thought it was crazy. I mean, they call it the internet's plural. So just to give you an idea of, it's like, let's calm down over there.
Right.
Traditionally, this is the company, their biggest company in their space. They did things their way and had been so successful over the years. To go crazy, it was too aggressive, and I don't blame them. They were probably right to take that pace, and that's why they're still around. Is they never trusted the guys like me who came in.
Mm-hmm.
It's just if they would have done well with this one, but probably ignoring the ones in the past and in the future will keep you on that steady pace, right? There's probably 1 out of 10 comes through is the right way to go. But yeah, it's been a neat ride doing that. And then I got more senior kind of managerial positions, started a company that can't talk a ton about right now. Unfortunately, I'd love to tell you guys more about this company that I just got out of, because they may or may not be involved in another acquisition talk. So I can't, you can look at LinkedIn and understand exactly who it is. But, I started a company in 2016. Had success, grew that a ton. It was in the e-commerce space, in the marketplace space, and I saw a need. The thesis there was that everyone, if you want to succeed online, selling products, and be a category king, you need to have a marketplace. So you need to sell first-party products, the products you sell, and third-party products, so products someone else sells. And I needed a software to do that. It's actually a problem that I had. And I created the software to do that. It took off, and yeah, it was really cool. What a ride that was! But I got out of that about 9 months ago. So probably, Cole, when you and I met each other this summer, I was just getting out of that. Yeah,
you were telling me about that. I'm sadly, I was like hoping we could dive into that a bit, but we won't.
I can tease it. It was a great ride. It actually took off in the cannabis accessory space of all places. We started in t-shirts and jewelry, and like so many startups do, you come up with you put it out in the market, and you grow and grow and grow, and then you tweak it and pivot, and then you find this one vein that has so much coal in it or whatever that it takes you to the roof. So. And that for us was cannabis accessories of all things. So that was a cool software startup, and I'm still involved. I'm still on the board. But I do have another one I'm kicking off. I'd love to tell you guys about. I haven't really announced it to the world, so I'm happy to tell you what my next foray is, if you're interested.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, man. Dive on in. Don't hold back.
Chris, you knew we hit it off. I could tell how passionate Chris was, Hayden, when I met him. And we started talking, and I'm just like, dude, I think in the first 5 minutes I was talking to you, I was like, I got a podcast. You got to come on the podcast. I was like, he's like, all right. I was like, let's get it set up. I think I texted you like a day after we met. And I'm like, hey, when are we getting you on here?
Hell yeah.
Oh, I was listening to a podcast, hearing about the 150-yard iron sight.
Oh, did you love that one?
That was wild.
Are you a hunter?
That was wild. No, I just not. I don't have the patience that Cole has to go out there in the cold mornings and
You know what
sit around.
You know what? Every time I tell somebody I'm like hunt, they're just like, "What?" They're like, "Do you hunt?" They're like, "You probably." I don't see how you can sit still for that long. I'm like, "Well, that's why I put a headphone in. I'll play." Dude, I'm such a go 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 that when I do get the chance to do that, like it's, I like to move and hunt too. I mean, I can only stay in one spot for so long. For I'm like, all right, there's no deer coming around here. Let's move on.
Chris, before you dive into your latest venture, want to kind of take a step back and maybe get your perspective on, well, one, what is rewarding about starting an e-commerce business? And then part two to that is for any aspiring entrepreneur, doesn't matter if you're young, old, what advice would you give to them if they wanted to start an e-commerce business?
Yeah, within e-commerce in particular, I think it's a fascinating place that you can win or lose quickly without significant investment. So it's opened up the world to the idea that, if you want to start a retail store, it used to be obviously a significant investment from people to space to inventory.
Yep.
You can really fake it till you make it now. And it's amazing how quickly you can catch fire with e-commerce. I mean, we've had things. I was at a company that specialized in t-shirts. I mean, really, it was just designed t-shirts. Had 150 employees, and it was a big t-shirt marketplace. But we'd see these things where there was a shirt, to give you an example, that was just a fun kind of playful thing on the Nene back in the day. It was Sip Chardonnay.
Yeah.
So they said, Sip Chardonnay and the Nene, whatever, put it on a shirt and sell it. So whatever, it sold a little bit, and we had a scrap bin where if there was a misprint or anything, we'd throw it, and then employees would go around and get them. So one of my marketing employees is on a smoke break. And this guy just looks cooler than any of us will ever look. Like just amazing tattoos in his hair. He's like a stylish guy, and it's natural. He's like effortless style.
Right.
And so he's just sitting there. And one of the other marketing employees is like, this looks good. He takes a picture and he uploads it on some random Reddit thread. Front page Reddit, thing explodes. Next thing you know, Ellen's got the shirt. She made a song shipping Chardonnay. You've got all these big like TV personalities and celebrities wearing this t-shirt. Like these things can take off. So e-commerce, you can do that, especially with social media being this flywheel there. It can get spun up very quickly. Now it can go away just as quick. But those types of things, I think, get folks really addicted to it because if you ever hit those rides, they're like nothing else. I mean, you're just like, okay, we're at capacity. Like all of a sudden we have so many orders coming in that we have to now figure out a good problem, which is how do we fill orders more efficiently? Yeah, exactly. So, I think that's the magic of e-commerce. I do think that, if I were talking to kind of the biggest players in the retail space, these big brands, I think they're probably leaving some stuff on the table with the physical world now. Like I think everyone's adjusted so much that some of these big brands are so worried about digital, they forget that still 80+% of retail is physical. And I think the magic's going to be the folks that can navigate the melding of those two worlds. How do you
omni-channel? I think is what they call it. That's literally the fancy buzzword.
That's what I do. It's like what. So I do what I do. What I do on like a daily basis where I work and what I do now is focus on the physical side of things. So it's omni-channel marketing is what it is. So it's all about how do you tie your website presence, your social media presence, your digital marketing presence into something that's in the real world, right? That's what we focus on. So we take we do a lot of experiential marketing where it's like an experience space or it's a theme space. But like you're spot on, I think, and I think a lot of brands, yeah, like you said, have shifted so heavily to the social media and influencer part of it that they started, and even before COVID hit, they started taking all their marketing and advertising budgets and saying, "Hey, let's push it all into this, right? Let's go pay influencers. Let's do do these little reels and this and that." And then now they're starting to go, "Oh, we spent so much money on that, but we're still missing that." We just did a poll of 50,000 Americans aged 25 to 45, and 90% of them said they'd still like to see our product in store before they purchase.
They've overcompensated.
Yeah, they've totally overcompensated.
Yep. And as you know, if you put a physical presence in, you might not sell a ton in that space necessarily, but your online sales within a vicinity of that, depending on where you are, will go up. I mean, they're very related. People are still physical, and I feel like the more you can do the physical experience, that's what people are looking for. And you don't want the old type of physical experience, like load the shelves with as much junk as you can and get people through. It has to be truly experiential, and those things need to meld together. Omnichannel is interesting. I just feel like it's been used for like 15 years and it's lost all taste because I've got an omnichannel solution. Everyone's saying that. I'm like,
cool. Like you said, it's the experience. It's the how do we get somebody, and it's not a 1-to-1 ratio anymore. It used to be like get somebody in and see how many people walk through and actually we sell a product, right? That's what the old retail model truly was. 5 people walk in the door, I sold 3 people. All right, so that means I have a 60%, close rate, so to speak. Now it's 5 people walk in, 5 people, 3 people buy something. What did those other 2 people do? Did they go home and buy on your online store? How much time did they expend in the area, right? Did they work? Like, there's so many more data points. And, like, even the biggest retailers, I work with one down in Texas. They're actually owned by Warren Buffett called Nebraska Furniture Mart. And they're massive. They're huge. They got, their showrooms are like 600,000 square foot. And they're unbelievable. And I was talking to them this past week, and it was just interesting hearing about like how much, they're big on inventory and selling stuff, but their e-commerce business, like they want foot traffic in, not just to leave with products, but because it builds the brand equity. So people get in, they can go, they own the entire development, like 500 acres down in Dallas, and they've got a cinema, they've got a restaurant, they got this and that. And they're not making any money. We're not trying to make any money. We're trying to create an experience for people to get in here and then want to trust our brand, whether they're buying online or in store, which I thought was absolutely genius. Like, they're like, we're not worried about that. We're just trying to keep the 7 to 8 million people that come onto our campus buying stuff and coming in.
Yep.
Chris,
yeah, you know how much more expensive it is to get them at the top of the funnel. I mean, if they come straight to your site to look for furniture, you're skipping out on so much expense. It's absolutely crucial.
Do you have any thoughts on hearing what Cole was just mentioning there, and any type of experience that these companies are trying to establish for their customers? I think another word that gets overused, and I work for Kroger today in the technology department, and a lot of stuff, and I'm not going to dive any deeper than this, we want to be quote unquote personalized for every single customer. And I think that's a fine line, but kind of want to get maybe your perspective or thoughts on what it means to have personalized experiences and whether or not, those are healthy strategies. I guess I can probably almost answer my own question, but want to maybe just get your honest thoughts on what it means to have a personalized experience or personalized product, etc.
Yeah, I think personalization goes kind of it goes to an extent, and it can be helpful, but it can be too far as well, right? Yeah. Like if somebody's only buying vegan products from Kroger, do you have to waste time throwing steak ads at them? No, but you don't necessarily have to dive into the very particular. I think it's more category personalization than hyper hyper specific.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes all the way through marketing. Like there's a dream all of us marketers have ever had of like, I want to know everything about every person that's ever walked in my store. And at some point it's just like there's just a lot of data.
Yep.
And there's not a lot we can figure out with that data.
Yep.
I think that there's a future, and this is something I played around with a couple of times, and I don't have if you guys or any of your listeners want to pursue this, you guys can reach out to me after the show. But there's this idea that can you have a never-ending interaction with your clients where you're always it's like a never-ending cart. So we have the never-ending aisle online, which is like the Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
You extend the aisle. Can you extend the transaction a similar way where you say, Kroger does this. You buy something from Kroger and then they send you coupons for something else. But could they entice you just like they would online in a physical store to buy more, but not necessarily in that transaction? Like it's going to be sent to your home, and then that leads to more ongoing transactions where it's almost like breadcrumbs of micro transactions in between major transactions.
Mm-hmm.
It's not perfect for every retailer, but I think there's something there where you can meld these worlds and say, let's take some best practices of performance marketing online
Mm-hmm.
and bring that offline.
Yeah.
And I think there's just some fascinating things that can be done in that space. And I've jammed with that with plenty of folks many times, but we never pursued anything real.
Absolutely. Yeah. My brain's spinning a million miles an hour here and all of that. I think one thing that comes to mind, and I'm already solutioning, is some type of subscribe and save feature where customers basically, it's kind of autopilot, but they have their big bulk purchases, whether it's the grocery space or the retail space. I'll use Amazon, for example. That way I can talk in more detail. Cole's got 2 kids. He needs, let's say, diapers every so often. Instead of Cole having to spend the time actually going and building out that cart continuously, he can subscribe for a set of Pampers, every 3 weeks or whatever the cadence needs to be. Like things like that is another way to get customers to continuously, shop your products outside of the traditional way that they want to shop with you.
Yeah, I mean, I even think like you think about a Kroger and their strengths, right? It's not necessarily having a DC that could ship e-commerce goods like an Amazon, but are there ways that they could sit there and say, hey, when Cole's checking out at his local Kroger, we have a local company in Cincinnati or Northern Kentucky that we're partnering with that might have an interesting product for him that's not traditional Kroger product.
Yeah.
Hey, you get a special offer, Cole, as you're checking out. $10 today, you get to try this product. It'll be shipped home. Those types of things where then you can start to be integrated in the community in the product cycle, and you can get this transaction. And people like to get products sent to them, and then it doesn't stress Kroger's logistics, which they don't need. Kroger doesn't need to be good at shipping home products. Like that's something they shouldn't necessarily worry about right now. But they could extend and have that functionality with third-party partners and get those transactions and just make pure profit off of them. Those are
absolutely
interesting things.
I love you sharing that for sure. No, 1,000%. Cole, it looked like you were about to dive in with something.
I knew when you said that, I wanted to see Hayden's reaction because he's very much like you could read him like a book sometimes, and I'm like looking at him, I'm like, would he really like something? He gets this big grin on his face, and like I know, like, oh yeah. I mean, I'm always smiling, so I have to read.
Well, if Cole's hitting it off with someone, I know that I'm going to get along with them too. So I'm immersing myself.
So I wanted to give Chris, because I know that the venture you're working on right now it's pretty neat. It's pretty cool. I mean, you told me a little bit about it when we met, but I'd love to give you the opportunity to kind of walk us through, like, what are you working on? Like, what's this venture that you're talking about?
Yeah, totally different. I'm talking about e-commerce and digital, and it's awesome, and it's my background, and I love it, but trying to get in the physical world a little bit. So we are setting about building a platform for autonomous construction. We want to build homes with essentially what you call a giant 3D printer. Yeah. So
all right, tell us more.
Just
like
let you absorb that a little bit.
Tell me more. Like how? So first question is, what steps do you have to take? And feel free to share or not share. But my first thing goes to the manufacturing side. I'm saying, hey, I know there's different levels of 3D printing and technology out there, but I'm assuming you're 3D printing individual pieces, and then like what's the next step? Are you having it? Is it all being assembled in like is this similar?
It prefab, or are
Yeah.
you building from beginning to end? Like, and again, like Cole said, just say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm passing on answering that, and we'll keep moving
Yeah,
along.
whatever's proprietary, you don't have to touch.
Oh no, I'm pumped up. We're putting this out there. We're building on site, so you can prefab. There's a lot of cool things you can do in that space. Doing that's about a 30% increase in productivity. You can build anything from a trailer to whole homes in a house and ship them in parts or in a whole. But you're going to run into the same issues that houses run into today. So we have designed a machine. I have a team of some of the best engineers in the world. These are the folks who have designed the best-selling cars on the planet. They are the folks that all the big companies go to when they have a significant engineering problem, and they love the vision. So they're equity partners of mine. So it's really exciting. But we looked at the problem, and we talked to everything from builders and developers to architects, and even futurists. Like, hey, what does the future look like? And the problem with construction today, everything's inside of a box, first of all. So there's a lot of problems with construction. There's not enough of it. We can't build quickly enough, but you don't see anything built outside the box. And we need to be able to design a new generation of housing that just thinks about things differently. This is going to be like the Tesla to cars, right? So 15 years ago, you got behind the wheel of a Tesla and you felt like you were in the future. Like, it was just such a different experience.
Looked different, drove different. Everything was different about it.
100%. It was so weird. I mean, I remember I test drove one for the first time. I'm like, I can't do it. Like, I wasn't ready. Like, it stops. Like, why does it stop? I have to hit the brake. I don't trust it, And nowadays, that's just, it's table stakes for vehicles. So to our homes, we'll actually print homes on site using concrete-like material. The convergence of trends is amazing. So, you have robotics and 3D printing. You have material technology that's coming out of these out of academia is next level. Vitruvian's named after Vitruvius, who wrote the original book on architecture.
Vitruvian is the company's name, by the way.
Yeah, it's the company's name.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Vitruvian man is the naked guy Leonardo da Vinci drew, but it's named after Vitruvius. They're bringing back these material technologies like Roman concrete, which is a geopolymer, things that can last thousands of years. Modern materials generally don't last that long. Things that are very environmentally friendly, like hempcrete that you can grow, battery technology built into concrete. Imagine if the walls of your house could store energy. What the possibilities would be.
Right.
Endless.
Endless.
It's wild, and this stuff can't come to market unless there's a conduit, a physical machine that can do this. So it's an amazing space. We've designed something. It took us a while to design. We went through. We were 100% sure we had the right direction, and then we talked to MIT engineers of all folks, and they're smart. Like, nope, scrap it. They're like, that's exactly what we thought of 15 years ago, and here's why that doesn't work. We're like, all right. So we've iterated, but it's been really cool. So we're excited. We have the final solution drawn up. We're going to go to market in the next 30 days or so and start raising money to build that solution. And we already have demand. There's already 3 projects that are interested in trying to build with our technology. We just need to build the actual unit for.
Well, that's exciting too, because like one of the things I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and our last guest actually we had on here, and all of what you're saying. So you just hit something that was interesting. So Scott Jacobs we had on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, Queen City.
Yeah, he was on the show.
I listened to that one.
Did you? Yeah. Well, you heard one of the things he said was a lot of entrepreneurs, right? You're seasoned, but a lot of entrepreneurs that aren't seasoned, haven't done it. Like they missed the boat on talking to like potential clients, doing that homework up front.
You got to make sure you're actually solving a business problem.
Yeah. So just like hearing that like reiterates, and for our listeners that are either longtime entrepreneurs, they'll nod their head like, oh, that's right, or future entrepreneurs, they go, oh, like, here's a case study of somebody that you wanted to move fast, but you also understand that like you have to check off boxes. Like there's some things that you can move really quick, and there's some things that you just have to like, it might take you a couple weeks, it might take you a month. Like you just have to like get through those lulls, because any entrepreneur is like, I want to go 100 miles an hour all the time. Like that's just like how you are, and you gotta. So I like that you pointed that out. One of the things I thought was kind of interesting about what you were saying, you mentioned Roman concrete. So probably about a month and a half ago, I read an article about, which I'm very interested in, like, how we can use, like, draw off of past, especially the Romans. Like their stuff lasted for, and is still around today for thousands and thousands of years. Meanwhile, we build, a house here, and after, 50 to 60 years, it's going downhill, right? Like all of a sudden it's, it's starting to cave, we've got cracks in the foundation, we've got all this stuff. And what I thought was super interesting was, and maybe you could shed some light on this, what I read is that the cement that they used to make, they had some sort of lime or something in it, and it was actually able to self-heal. So when water would leak into it, it would actually correct itself so that you never had to worry about cracking or stuff like that. Am I right? Is that what that is?
You're spot on. Forever they thought it was a mistake.
Yes,
they thought it was a mistake. Then they looked at it. They thought that the process, that they were heating it wrong, and they realized. I mean, you go to Greece, right? You go to Athens, and you look at ruins. They're pebbles on hills. You're like, what is this? And then you go to Rome, and Greek history is a little longer, but you're looking at stuff in Rome, and you're like, why does this stuff look like you can walk through it? Like you're actually going into it. You're going into 1,000, 2,000-year-old structures. So they did find that on a molecular level, they have these deposits that as cracks form, water goes into it. Instead of expanding the cracks, they'll actually take these lime calcium deposits, and those things will fill in and re-dry. It's
self-healing.
Wild.
It's self-healing.
So this morning I was I know you guys shugiban is charring wood. It's a Japanese technique to seal wood in a natural way. So we're doing planter beds, and you don't use treated wood because it can seep into the beds, and we're growing vegetables. So we were looking for natural ways, and this is an ancient Japanese method. Interesting thing, I was reading Vitruvius's book, the 10 books of architecture he wrote, De Architectura, and he talks about the Romans did this too. You char wood, and to your point, Cole, these ancient techniques coming back, and you're like, you can char wood and it treats it, and you can put that wood in the ground, it won't rot. It'll last 80 to 100 years.
It's not.
I mean, it's just these things that are like, oh, we don't have to just dip stuff in chemicals. I don't know if you've seen how they treat boards.
Oh yeah.
Those green boards that you get for like a deck. It's just sitting in chemicals. You're like, that's probably not as good as something like fire on wood.
Totally.
That just chars it.
Well,
so
you're getting me.
It's cool.
We could get a whole conversation.
I could talk for hours on this.
Well, what I was thinking is like, you could do a whole conversation about how we've built stuff to fail over the past 30, 40, 50 years so that you have recurring revenue. Like a lot of stuff is built these days not to last for the right amount of time, right? We'll give you a 10-year warranty because we only want it to last 10 years, right? You have a 20-year, like how much do you see, even with a lifetime warranty? I mean, that stuff's always like, get in the
fine print,
and it's not really it's a lifetime on something that actually shouldn't fail, or it's so minimal it doesn't matter. It costs so much you might as well replace it anyways. But it's just interesting, like some of these techniques, were they lost? They were lost because people thought we were being innovative, and also too, it's the capitalism. I can make something that lasts long enough for people to be happy, but
you want to have a repeat customer.
You want to have, and that's a catch-22. So I mean, I feel like if we could go, I could go down a wormhole of the studies and because I got really obsessed with that at one point a couple years ago, because I was like, I can't remember, I was frustrated with something, And I remember like I read a couple posts on it. And I talked to some people, some experts, about this stuff, and it was like I got way too. And my wife's like, "Why are you so obsessed?" I was like, "Because I feel like everything's made to break. That's why."
Yeah. Why does your phone slow down after 2 years? The light bulbs last 6 months. The old ones last, 60 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting space. I mean, our take on it though is housing needs to be, I mean, foundationally, if you want to change society, housing is a really good place to start. So you look at all these, financial and economic trends. I mean, 2/3 of the United States, their entire wealth is in their home.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no cash in the bank. You've heard all the stats that people have, 30 days of cash or whatever it is. The majority of Americans, their entire value is in their home itself, and fewer Americans can own homes than ever before. I mean, the median price of a home is over $450,000 right now, which is tons of money, right? So if we can shake that and give people homes that they can be proud of, that are extremely desirable, and you can do it at scale, without requiring labor that doesn't exist, right? This is a very rough labor market, without damaging the environment. A third of environmental waste comes from the construction industry. And again, you can do something with these materials that can last a long time, that can be changed over time if necessary. And that's, dude, I mean, that's where I get fired up. I'm like, we got to get out of this weird consumerism hamster wheel where we're kind of buying little things over time and just bleeding ourselves dry. Have a solid foundation and then go from there and do what you want. And that's, to me, that's how you give people true freedom. It starts with probably the biggest thing you invest in, which is your home.
For sure. Now, I know you're still in the early innings here, Chris, but I'm curious to understand, like, if Cole wanted a home through your company and I wanted a home, would we be getting identically like the same type of square footage? Or is there any type of, thinking back to a few minutes ago, personalization or customization between, customer A versus customer B?
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty. I mean, these machines can build, once the machine's on site, it can build whatever you want. So, the I think third most trending thing on Midjourney, the AI site, is AI architecture.
Okay.
So you're going to see stuff where you go in and you're like, man, I love, you're inspired. You're a Game of Thrones fan. I want a Game of Thrones inspired home
Yep.
that is this big, and whatever other keywords, and you're going to get something that's spit out, and it's going to be for you. Now that's not going to happen tomorrow, right?
Sure.
But ultimately, that's what you can do, and play around. I don't know if you guys have gone down the rabbit hole of Midjourney or Dolly or any of that yet, but you can get lost in, like, man, what if the Jetsons and Game of Thrones and this and Hogwarts all got together? Like, what would that look like? And it'll throw some house together that somehow fits in these things.
That's so fascinating. I've dabbled around a little bit with Dolly, and
Yeah.
that's all AI, right? I believe. And
Yep.
is that owned by? Is it open source? I think, or open API,
It's
which is Chat
OpenAI.
CP. Yeah.
I was gonna say,
ChatGPT, yeah.
I'm kind of like putting my sales hat on here because I mean I love sales. I love everything about interacting with consumers and that part of it. And what I'm thinking, like, one of your value adds that it's different, because I feel like what you're gonna struggle with a little bit until you get the chance to explain it is like, well, manufactured homes, they already do that, and you're not manufactured homes. Like, there's a space for manufactured homes. I actually worked with a guy down in Alabama. That's what they do, is they wanted to manufacture mansions or $1 million homes, right? So typically you had manufactured homes that were like $250,000 to $400,000 homes. They had basically the same footprint, and the goal of that was that you could run them through an assembly line and build a ton at a time, right? That's what the benefit of manufactured homes, but you lost a lot of that customization to an extent, because a manufacturing plant was all about, just like most manufacturing is, like this, right? They want an assembly line. They want to make the same amount of parts or the same stuff. And what I think is super interesting about what you guys are doing is that 3D, the printing and the robotics part of it is what allows you guys to be custom, because you can do it. You can basically say, hey, we can build you something that's going to last, going to be this and that. But it's the customization part that really excites me. What you guys are doing, that you can do something that's leading edge, that's cutting down on labor needs, it's using these new materials, and it's custom. Like, that's what's really cool about it.
Yeah, that's building outside the box. That's that when we started thinking about this and looking at where the world's supposed to be today, based on people's predictions, 50 years ago, and where it's going tomorrow, it's not boxy living. I mean, nature doesn't have boxes, right?
Right.
We have curves. We have things that you can't build in a factory, or you can build on site with only master craftsmen that are fewer and fewer and extremely expensive. All of a sudden, that's table stakes. Like, you set a machine and you want something that perfectly flows with the environment in which you build. It's done.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
It's going to redefine the industry. It's a new category of housing. It's like, we want to make a house that if you spend, $200,000 or $300,000 on a house, people who spent $2 million on theirs are jealous and going, why? Just like when Tesla came out, that's what they did, right? They had $60,000, $70,000 cars that the folks with the $120,000, $130,000, high-end German cars are going, oh, why am I driving this? Why don't I get one of those? Same thing's going to happen in housing.
To simplify, what I'm hearing you say is you're here to shake up the housing industry.
We are.
Amen. I like that a lot. That's awesome. That's a huge problem to tackle, and that's awesome that someone such as yourselves and who you surround yourselves with, they're trying to tackle and make housing more affordable, and also just come up with new and innovative ways to mass scale those solutions.
I got one more question about that too. So, because I'm thinking about 5 years from now, let's say you go through your funding, you start getting set up. My question to you is, and for our listeners, because I'm very interested in what you're doing. I think this is sweet. We could probably go on and on and on. We'll have to link up outside of this. My question is, like, so let's say you go through funding. How long is it going to take you to get this machine built? This set of, I don't know if it's one machine or if it's different. It's different. You probably maybe it's a few machines in a grouping. I don't know what it is, but how long is that going to take? And then when are you going to be able to actually start? And I understanding like that you might have some hiccups along the way, but like when you get this thing, like when you launch and actually have your machines built and after funding, how long is that going to take? And then how long do you expect, if everything goes according to plan, once you get to the finish line, knowing things could change, how long will it take a machine to build a 2,000 square foot house? Do you know? I mean, maybe it's just a guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So the machine itself, we basically broke off a year, said, a year to make that first machine. It's going to version out over time. The key to our business model is build autonomy over time. So we can build 30% of a house with the first iteration, up to 95% of the house with the final iteration, fully autonomous. But that first machine will roll off within a year. Our machine's designed to be built at scale. So my engineers come from the automotive world. They are the folks who, it's really easy. And this is like an engineering thing that I've learned. I'll say it like I've known this my whole life. It's really easy to design something to be built once, right? Like you can design the craziest car and build it one time. That's not actually that hard. It's really hard to design something that can be repeatedly built thousands of times. And so that's the key of finding the right group of builders for this and getting us away from more of the, hey, let's take ideas out of Chris's head and throw it on a chalkboard and make that happen. This is much more of a, hey, let's go through a true engineering design process to get this at scale. So that's where we come in, how we get this to market so we can scale this thing up, is that we can build machines and then build more and more and more of those machines over time. And that's our business model. We're a machine maker at the end of the day. That's the foundation. As far as then how long it takes, we want to have houses that are built in 30 to 45 days.
Okay.
Our initial houses will take about 3 months to build, which is still a third. It's 9 months is the average time to build a
Right. That's
2,000
what I was
square foot
kind
house today.
of 9 to
So
12 months.
ours
Yeah.
will be 3.
Okay.
And our machine will be on the site for about a week. That's how quickly the actual, like, our piece of it goes. So it's just then handing it off and making sure everyone else gets their stuff done.
That's awesome.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
excited.
thinking ahead because I build my next house. I'm just trying to time it out.
Yeah.
So I can use the machine. Yeah, that'd be cool. Think about if I could be the first house. Dude, we gotta time out the first house you build. I could be like your beta customer. Would I get like a discount?
That's a true salesman right there. Already working. Shit.
The other side of Ohio has a bit of a bookmark in the first home. So we do have a commitment, but absolutely, we'll take the LOI.
I'll arm wrestle them for it.
For blocks of homes at a time, though. So if you want to build 50, then certainly.
So tying in previous episode that Cole and I had with Scott, in terms of and feel free not to answer this, but raising capital, how are you approaching that? Are you doing any type of Kickstarter type of campaign, where people, because it sounds like people are definitely interested in your service or your products here, could a potential customer go out and say, hey, I want to, make a down payment and I want you to, build my house, 6 months from now, 1 year from now. How's that all shaking out?
Yeah. So the initial fundraise will be much more traditional. So I've learned, I think one of the biggest things from raising money that I've learned and learned it through the scars is not all the dollars are created equal. And to make sure that we have the right partner or partners early on, and this is a more recent lesson, because I've been kind of the let's say the blind squirrel who's lucked into a lot of things that worked out really well throughout my life. And when I had to raise money for the first time, more like real money, like millions, it seemed like, gosh, somebody's going to give me $1 million. Yes. I'll just take the money. And you realize that the dollars, the hand that the dollars are attached to, matters
a lot.
More than anything else. And so that's really important for us, is making sure that we have the right partners who we have a grand vision. This is not like a Midwestern company, right? You see so many companies here, and I think a lot of investors expect this of we'll get to $20 million in revenue. That's great. We've got a market and it's this big. This is a $6.5 trillion global market. $6.5 trillion. This thing grows annually by more than most market sizes. Wow. The CAGR is that big. So it's a big vision. We need the right folks to support it and then to guide us. It's hardware. Hardware's certainly expensive and confusing, right? Yeah. But we try to de-risk it with the team, with the right vision and with the right model. So I'm excited to do this and to kind of take the lessons from I've had in my past and take them to market.
So how much are you guys raising for your? I'm assuming it's gonna be a pre. This is I'd call it a pre-seed, seed. It kind of sounds like a mixture of both. I mean, more pre-seed than anything, just because you haven't developed yet.
Yeah.
How much are you guys raising?
Between 3 and 5.
Okay.
So we don't. That's why we haven't gone to market yet. We're still working kind of tweaks on the economic model, but as soon as that's kind of well beat up, then we go to market and see how the market receives it.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Is you're focusing, you've de-risked a lot of it. I mean, risk is risk. There's always risk, but the goal is when you're going out and seeking capital too, is you want to de-risk your investment as much as possible by taking your time. By, like you said, I love that you hit the team, right? Having the right team is de-risking, right? The people with the experience that know what they're talking about. Having them in the right roles and being a part of that's huge. And then obviously, like you said, the investors, you don't want to just go take money from anybody. You want to have strategic investors that understand what you're trying to do and are willing to, go the extra mile or go on the journey with you versus just hand you money to get money out.
Yep. You got it.
I think we
getting
wrap
close to
things
time?
up with some quick hitters. Yeah, I want to respect Chris's time, and we were definitely late today. That was my fault. Apologies. But before we do sign off for today, Chris, we do want to just ask a couple of more maybe I don't know, personal questions or not necessarily business related questions. And this is one that we ask a lot of our guests. What is one piece of advice you would give your younger self, and then a piece of advice you'd like to give to your future self?
Younger self, you always fantasize about this. I wish I would have invested in this thing or that thing. So now if I could go back to the future, that would be it. Honestly, the dollars not being created equal, that was a huge learning experience for me. I spent a lot of the time in my life on this most recent startup where, there probably wasn't the right alignment early on with dollars in the vision. So I'd love to go back and tell myself that. What was the future? So what was the second part of it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then what piece of advice would you give to your future self?
Whew. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how things we'll see how things end up. But I think just hoping that my future self has the energy and the drive, and that, I think it's really important not to let the world wear you down, and to make sure that you can stay sharp and focused. And I see folks who, 10, 15 years down the road, they just don't have that same like push to them, that same fight. I hope I never lose a fight. Like, I hope I'm like the old man who's just kind of weirdly intense.
Hey, I just was thinking of my dad when he said that. So we had my dad I'm dragging us out a bit, but when you said that, so my dad is a role model of mine. Like, I love him. I have a close relationship with him. We actually had him on the show. So he's been a lifetime entrepreneur. He's run multiple successful businesses, and has been a huge inspiration to me. And he literally, he's almost 60, I think 60 or 61 now. And he literally gets in when he gets like going, like, right, isn't he, Hayden? I mean, he's like a 25-year-old with an idea. Like, he's like, it's like it's his first time.
Relentless is the word that comes to mind.
Relentless, like relentlessly passionate. When he gets going, his face starts getting red. He's like, needs to drink water. I mean, like, that same kind of energy that you'd see, you see out of me. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm like that. When I get excited, I'm energetic. I'm like that. And I'm like, I always say, like, if there's one thing I admire, and I always told I've told my wife this, and I've told my daughters this, and things I've shared. And one thing that always stuck with me is every day I'd wake up, and he was never upset about going to work. He was never sad. He was excited about what the day had to come. And, like, that's what I hear you saying is, like, I don't, in 20, 25 years from now, I want to be just as excited. I don't want to lose that fire. And I love that message. I love that goal.
Yep, 100%. Got to beat the sun up every morning.
Yep.
If the old sun gets up before you do, then you got a late start to the day. You got a lot to wake up for.
Do you have another?
I was just gonna say, I heard that we've talked about this. You've got 3 children and I'm sure a beautiful wife. So my question to you is, how important is it for your children to see you chasing your dreams as an entrepreneur, and even with that goal of waking up excited and being fired up? Like, how important is that, and how are you teaching your children to do that?
It's certainly important. I mean, for me, it's showing them that there aren't limitations.
Mm-hmm.
We set our own limitations in life, so make sure you don't set limitations for yourself, because no one else really is. It looks like there might be limitations out there, but you'd be surprised. I think that might get my son in trouble a little bit. Hey, there aren't limitations. Okay, well, artificially there are limitations while you're at school. Okay?
Right.
We're picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, but certainly I think that's important, and I think being inclusive. So one of the things I've tried to really research and look into is, how are like successful kids raised?
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kinds of crazy theories out there, from kind of like let them go, throw them to the wolves, and the ones that come out great are great, and the ones that don't are kind of the exact opposite. And I think one of the things I've taken away though is include them, like be very inclusive. So when you're having conversations, when I have people over, business associates, or we host dinners, let's make sure they're at the table. They can observe that, understand how people are interacting, what these conversations are. And maybe they can't be a part of that. I mean, they're 6, 4, and 9 months right now, but they can start to see and hear that and understand, oh, hey, like they're talking like this, and this is how people do these things. So I do think that kind of inclusivity, cutting down those age barriers, will hopefully give them confidence. And I love, I mean, a quick little dad story.
Yeah, let's hear it. I love dad stories.
Yeah, my kids. So we kind of like limit the screen time type of thing, right? And so it's really special. We watch like F1 racing and Buckeyes and Bengals football. Like that's kind of, so when the TV's on, it's like a special, like, oh, we're together, like doing this thing, right? And so my kids like know F1 racing. And F1, I don't know if you guys are into it, but
yeah.
There's like some technicality. Like it's not the most straightforward thing in the world. There's a lot of nuances. And I always host like a first race get together with just some of my friends who are really into F1.
Right.
Like the people that don't talk during the race, just kind of observe and discuss, you know? And my son was like telling somebody what Lewis Hamilton's problems were during one of the races last year. And they're like, there's this, at the time it was 5, this 5-year-old kid like explaining the problems with his car setup at a race. And just like, and he had no problems. He wasn't like, oh, it's slow. He's like, well, they didn't get the right, aero package on, and the porpoising is really, costing him on these straights. And the guy's like, what the hell is wrong? Like, but I just want him to be confident, to say those things, and to observe and understand at that level. And you can't expect that he doesn't just because of his age.
Oh, it's just the beauty of, and I just love that message. A great way to wrap up this episode, because I mean, I love dad stories. I tell dad stories on here all the time. And like, for me, one of the things I've always said is the same thing to you is like, be inclusive. Like there's things, as like our oldest is 9. So as she's getting older, there's some things that like when she's 5 or 6, like she could have been around, but not really got. And now you start seeing her like, she's listening more and she's being more attentive to like, oh, they're talking about this that happened on the news. And like, okay, we can't right there. So there's but what I love is when you hear your children that you've included them in those high level conversations or environments, and they're talking confidently with somebody else because they were listening and like, think about how much that's helping their brain development by learning about things that are way more complex than just like, hey, let's go do our ABCs, right?
Well, they're learning through action is what I'm hearing you guys describe.
It's awesome.
You can tell a kid to go do X, Y, and Z, but if they're actually watching mom and dad do it, that means a whole lot more.
Yeah. Super cool, man. So, I mean, I could throw a bunch more at you, but I know we're wrapping up. So, Chris, do you have any more last things you want to say before we wrap it up for the day?
No, I appreciate your guys' time. I mean, this was really cool. Hopefully, next time I'm in Cincinnati, maybe grab a drink or something.
Dude, let's do it.
Absolutely.
Let's do it, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Listeners, once again, we appreciate you tuning in, checking out. Hope you enjoyed this conversation with Chris. He's got a lot of exciting stuff going on. Chris, hopefully when you guys are, maybe after you get through your fundraising round and start getting into manufacturing, we'll have you back on to share some updates.
You'll have to come to my place and see the machine in action.
Oh, I'm in.
Hell yeah.
Oh, man. I'm booking my trip already. All right. Thank you guys so much. Chris, thanks for jumping on. Appreciate it, man.
Cheers.
See ya.
God